Shalini ma'am?
Yes, sir. Shall we
Yeah.
start it?
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. A very good evening to one and all present here. Today we have with us as a keynote speaker Dr. Pal Datta Chaudhary, Joint Secretary of iSPELL India. Welcome you, ma'am. We have Chairperson Dr. Prashanta Chakravarti sir, Vice President of iSPELL India with us today, and Master of Ceremonies Miss Shweta Sur. A hearty welcome to one and all present here, all the august academicians and research scholars, whoever has joined here today with us. So the session is related to partition memories. So I would like to invite, without much delay, I would like to invite and introduce Miss Shweta Sur, who is the Master of Ceremonies today. Miss Shweta Sur has done her MA, MPhil, UGC NET, and she is NE SLET qualified. She is a BA from Dilbrugh University, and she is MA from Tejpur University. She is MPhil from Bodoland University. Her current designation is Assistant Professor of English at Khairun-Nisa Begum Women's College, Karimganj, Assam. She has published research papers in various journals which are indexed by Web of Science UGCK along with ISSN and ISBN numbers. She has presented research papers in many national, international seminars and conferences. She has also got her poems published in some reputed journals and anthologies. She has keen research interest in Indian writing in English, South Asian literature, migration literature, post-colonial studies, and climate fiction. So today we have with us such a great scholar to moderate the session further. So I hand it over the session to you, Shweta. Ma'am, please carry it forward.
Thank you, Shalini ma'am, for introducing me. And today I feel very happy and honored to share the space in today's event. As a Master of Ceremonies, I take the privilege to welcome you all to the e-seminar of iSPELL on Memory, Alienation, and Fractured Identities of Partition from India's Northeast. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yes,
Please.
yes, you are.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. In today's event, we have with us Dr. Payal Datta Chaudhary as our keynote speaker, Dr. Prashanta Chakravarti as the chairperson, Dr. G.A. Ghanashyam sir, founder and general secretary of iSPELL. To introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Payal Datta Chaudhary is a professor and director of School of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, Deva University, Bangalore. She is National Joint Secretary of iSPELL. Her area of interest is literature culture of India's Northeast, among others. She has authored books, Folktales from India's Northeast, Women of Fulbari, Lockdown Diaries, etc. I would like to request ma'am to take over the session and enlighten us with your valuable input.
Thank you so much, Shweta. I must begin this session by first of all thanking Team iSPELL, Ghanshyam sir, Anupama ma'am, Prashanta sir, everybody who are in the core committee. It has always been a pleasure to be in the iSPELL forum and share, and do different activities together. I do not know actually whether I am really qualified to speak on this kind of a topic that I have chosen, for today's session. But having said that, I will humbly submit to everybody that this is something which is very close to my heart. It has always been. And of late, probably all the more when we have just recently celebrated the 76th, year of India's independence, and several other things probably, motivated me to go back and look at partition history. And since I particularly work on India's Northeast, I thought that what could be more apt than probably looking at my own history, my own culture. When I introduce this particular topic, memory, alienation, and fractured identities of partition from India's Northeast, I would again submit this that there are a few reasons probably that I would like to speak on this forum on this particular topic today, and also why of late I'm taking a lot of interest in this particular area. One particular reason is when I see people, my own students or probably research scholars or friends, and probably people of today's generation, they feel that partition of 1947 is something which is already a long backstory, something which is already over, and something which there is nothing much to talk about. We probably just go for the Independence Day and wherever it is compulsory probably, and just listen to some speeches and sing the national anthem and eat some sweets and come back. That is one. And also from the research point of view, I have seen several research scholars, academicians feeling that this is one of those topic of partition which is probably already overdone with, within quotation. So it's already overworked is what people feel. Today's session, I want to bring forward this particular notion that I feel that there is nothing in cultural studies, there is nothing in literary studies which we can say, is a topic which has already been overworked. It depends on the perspective. It depends on from which angle, from what lens that we are looking at this particular topic. So when we talk about partition, this is my humble submission that scholars, students of today should not feel that this is something which has already been done and over with. So much has already been worked on. Just like when we talk about Shakespeare in today's time, there are so many things probably in the contemporary scenario that we can still look at, relook at. So similarly, partition is, of course, something which is not at all done with, and there are lots of things probably that we can think about once again pertaining to our area, our research interest. Having said that, just a quick update on whether my PPT is visible and whether I am audible. Somebody, if you can just say if it's visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Ghanshyam sir,
yeah, visible and audible.
Thank
Both.
you so much. Okay. All right. I will, I was given, a time limitation. I'll try to keep up to that. And probably I do not want to, on a Monday evening, take you through a very lengthy lecture. But I'm very grateful that there are people even on a Monday evening at 7 who have joined for this session to listen to me. I can see several known names among the participants. So I'm grateful for that. I would only, take you through this particular course of journey just to share my passion for this particular area in research, India's Northeast and partition, how we can combine together, because there's very less work which has been done on this particular area. Okay. When we talk about partition narratives, as I just mentioned now, the partition of 1947, we majorly see that these are stories of from Punjab and Bengal, probably which are in the mainstream partition literature narratives, whether these are Bollywood movies or probably the texts that we have grown up reading, or texts that we prescribe in our syllabus as academicians. These are narratives basically from Punjab and Bengal. There are reasons for that. Violence and trauma probably were really a lot in those areas, and also there are historical facts probably for which Punjab and Bengal in the narrative scenario is very prominent when it comes to partition narratives. But I would argue in this particular presentation that I am making that the very notion of understanding partition is not only limited to these two regions, even though they had their own shares and a lot of share, I'm sure, about partition memories and the trauma that people have undergone. My study basically takes into consideration the aspect of memory I give a lot of importance to memory, and the foundation of this particular work is on memory studies, because when we talk about 1947, that particular point of time, for me, when I'm talking about this particular partition narrative, it is also about what I have heard from my mother, my father, my aunts, uncles, my relatives, because I'm basically going to talk about one particular region in India's northeast to which I belong to. I've grown up there, and I have firsthand seen, if not the trauma, I cannot see, because by the time when I grew up, there was no trauma particularly, but there was this sense of dislocation, displacement, the very notion of, that forgotten space, or probably trying to remember that space. So this entire study that I have put together today is basically on this particular idea of remembrance and forgetting. Remembrance, because people like me, I'm sure there are many more of today's generation who want to remember. They do not want to forget. And yet there are, these stories of trauma, these stories of dislocation and displacement that people want to probably forget also. So in between the connotation of remembrance and forgetting, is the memory studies of partition that I locate to. My study is also based on a lot of contemporary way of looking at partition, particularly the digital initiatives that I'll be speaking in towards the end of my talk about the partition archive, the graphic stories, the social media and all that, which I particularly feel are doing a lot, and people who want to work on partition narratives should take recourse to. When I'm talking about this particular area, let me very humbly submit that I am no authority to talk about partition narratives and partition as such in the entire India's northeast. My work is limited to, the partition which had taken place in one region of India's northeast that is known as the Barak Valley. People who live in Assam would know that usually we talk about the two valleys, that is the Brahmaputra Valley, the upper Assam, and Barak Valley, which is the lower Assam. So I am trying to locate partition memories from this particular region, that is the Barak Valley of Assam, which was divided from Sylhet, which is right now in Bangladesh. At that point of time, East Pakistan, and now it is in Bangladesh. So this is the particular location of my work, my study, which is limited to the Sylhet and Barak partition. And also another reason that I'm very interested in this particular work is when I started working on this area, I found very limited work which records the narratives in particularly the fictional space. There are works which are written in Bengali, but when you look at English works in English for reading probably of today's generation who may not know how to read in Bengali, or probably, for a larger audience per se, because there is a lot of migration to different parts of India. There is a lot of diaspora which has settled, in various parts of the world. We find a very, very limited records of such kind of fictional or non-fictional narratives. So that is where my idea of continuing this particular work on partition narratives from the Barak Valley of Assam stems from. Continuing with this, I must give you a little bit of history of what particularly is, the Barak Valley Sylhet partition in Assam. When we talk about the July referendum of 1947, in case somebody is probably not aware of that, we got our independence from the British rule in August, but there was a very, very memorable thing which happened in the month of July in Assam, when there was this referendum. I'm sure if people have looked at, there are all these movies which are coming up, like very recently in 2017 or 18, this movie, which was not a literal translation, but remade from Bengali to Hindi, Bollywood, Begum Jaan. If you have seen that movie, you'd see probably for today's generation, so easy to understand about how haphazard was the Ratcliffe line of the partition, which was done basically on a very haphazard geographical demarcation of India and Pakistan. So much before that, just a month before that, there was this July referendum of 1947, which took place in Assam, When before that, Sylhet, this particular place that I'm talking about, was during the British regime. It was a part of Assam from 1874 until 1947. And people who are aware of the 1971, once again, the war, the Bangladesh Liberation War and all that, would know that Sylhet is basically a Bengali dominated area in Bangladesh. So at that point of time also, Sylhet was within Assam. And there are reasons, as I will explain later on, of Sylhet being a part of Assam. But the most interesting thing during my study that I found was that there were protests from the indigenous Assamese people as well as the Sylhetis, both Bengalis, Bengali Hindus as well as Bengali Muslims, who wanted at that point of time Sylhet not to be a part of Assam. They wanted it to be separate because Assamese indigenous culture, Assamese indigenous language is entirely, if not entirely, but quite a lot of different from the Bengali culture, the Bengali language per se. So neither the Sylheti Bengali Muslims or the Hindus wanted at one point of time, very surprisingly, Sylhet to be a part of Assam. But the July referendum of 1947 changed everything for the Sylhetis. When a choice, a kind of a voting was given to the Sylhetis to choose whether after the partition they would want Sylhet to be a part of India or Pakistan. So that was a choice given to them. People did vote, but they never thought that the division that would be done so very carelessly, so very callously. So when we talk about the partition that I'm talking about in today's time of the Barak Valley and Sylhet, what basically happened? Sylhet, which was there in Assam for a very long period of time, became a part of Bangladesh, became a part of Pakistan, I should say, rather, because at that point of time, there was no Bangladesh. East Pakistan, leaving only 3.5 thanas of Ratabari, Badarpur, Hailakandi, and Patarkandi. Those were the 4 places which were dominated by Bengalis, and they were tagged along with Assam. So that is where the problem took place. Because on one side, that had a majority of, not majority, 100% you can say, of all Sylheti Bengalis, Muslims as well as Hindus, who were made to be a part of Assam, and the rest of the Sylhet was ceded to East Pakistan. So it did not do justice either for the Hindus, Sylheti Hindus, or for the Sylheti Muslims. So again, another very important connotation of my talk is also about the difference when we look at the partition of Sylhet Barak Valley partition that we are talking about, and its difference with the mainstream partition that we are talking about. Whenever we speak about the 1947 partition, we are usually talking about religious demarcation, right? But when we talk about the partition of India's northeast, we are talking about mainly, even though today I'm talking about Barak Valley and all that, there are histories of partition in Tripura as well, right? Again, a lot of Bengalis dominated place. So we find that the major line of divide then becomes the ethno-linguistic divide, the language, the ethnographical part, the cultural divide, because of which, very surprisingly, even just before, the referendum, whereas people during the British time, during the colonial period, wanted Sylhet to be a part of Pakistan for different reasons, whatever. They wanted Sylhet to be a separate region, not a part of Assam. But the same Sylheti Bengalis, as well as the Sylheti, the Muslims, then made it very clear that they did not want to be a part of Pakistan, and there was mass migration from Pakistan, East Pakistan, to Barak Valley. Not only Barak Valley, actually the various parts of Assam, even the Khasi and Jaintia hills for that matter, because if we look at Shillong history, it probably is a different topic right now. I may not want to, go into that, but a lot of mass migration started happening because for various reasons, because they could not really align to the culture, to this particular division which had taken place immediately after the July referendum, after the partition. So when we are looking at the partition history of the space that I'm talking about, the narratives are majorly about the lost home. Whereas when we look at the Bengal partition, when we look at the Punjab partition, when we are looking at mainstream narratives, we find that we talk about the trauma, violence, rapes, and whatnot. But the major idea that we are talking about that we find in the Sylhet Barak Valley partition is about the lost home. The lost home which was there in Sylhet. So when you see mass exodus of the population migration, these are all immigrant experiences, migrant ordeals. There are histories of people. Even my family has undergone that history, even though we have never seen Bangladesh and all that. But then my grandfather, my parents who had been there at one point of time, they have their own memories of coming to and settling down to Barak Valley, leaving all their property, their home and their relatives and whatnot. So this kind of migrant ordeals I have seen during my entire childhood days, as well as the time period, whatever I have spent back in Assam, is everyday, probably, living room talk of every Sylheti family back there in Barak Valley. When they talk about, the kind of a house that they used to have, the zamindari house and the regalia, the kind of property. So that is a very common thing that you find in the migrant ordeals of that time period. And issues of homelessness, because it's not only that the affluent people who shifted, but then there were a lot of impoverished people also who had to shift. So that loss of livelihood, the loss of income, and very importantly that I'll be talking subsequently is the struggle for an identity formation, which exactly what I meant by fractured identity. You are neither here nor there, and being thrust upon a new place, which is Assam, wherein probably, the entire culture is different, the language is different. The migrants, the immigrants felt that they are nowhere. So that becomes a very important issue when we talk about the partition narratives, the partition history of Sylhet Bangladesh partition. So basically, whatever has been written about or whatever field study has been done in this particular space, it's all about the loss of home, that resultant sense of homelessness. So that creation of a new identity in a new place. And very interestingly, people who belong to that place will agree with me that there is this essence of Desher Bari and Towner Bari, which probably, the chairperson for today, Prashanta sir, will probably speak about when he is, concluding, probably, I hope so, that this particular term, Desher Bari, signifies in Bengali that your house, in your ancestral house, and Towner Bari is the home that you have built. So Desher Bari and Towner Bari, that binary that we find between the ancestral property, the ancestral home back in Sylhet, and the Towner Bari that the immigrants made in different parts of Barak Valley, and also a large number of population who settled in Shillong and other places of Assam at that point of time. That particular division, that particular memory haunted them for a very long time. And I would say that probably it's there in their experience even today. I have grown up hearing such stories that we used to have this huge, mango orchard and things like that. Ponds and all that. So, that very essence of ancestral house, the real house, was there in the Sylheti Bengali, memory for a very long period of time. And also the reminiscences of the joint family village home, by Desher Bari, or the ancestral property. It was always for a very long time the home in Sylhet. Even when Sylhet became a part of Bangladesh after the 1971 Mukti Yuddha and all that, it was still those reminiscences that people who were settled in Barak Valley felt about that. Along with that, what becomes very important for us to understand is that particular, contemporariness that we are talking about, the sense of displacement. And in today's time, I'm sure, the current generation who has never heard about this partition narratives and all that, at least must have in passing heard about the NRC problem in Assam and the CAA problem, which I'll be talking about later on. And there probably, stems that ambiguity of citizenship, because this immigration, this migration from Sylhet to Barak Valley to other parts of Assam did not happen just in 1 year or one particular period of time. It was a continuous process. All the more so after the 1971 thing, it happened continuously. And with that, in today's time, when we talk about the citizen-foreigner binary, the very pertinent question that is asked is the date of relocation. When did you come to Assam? So that becomes a very important connotation in today's time. I go forward to another very important issue in this partition is the politics of language and the politics of culture, which is probably not there in the mainstream partition narrative when we look at the narratives from Punjab or the narratives from Bengal or any other region for that matter. So the politics of language, I feel, is probably the most important politics which divided, the division that took place between Sylhet and Barak Valley, right? So we had this particular essence of this Bengaliana, the Bengali, but then even in today's time, the people who are settled in Assam or Tripura, they do not actually speak the dialect of Bengali that is spoken in West Bengal. And even for Bengalis in Barak Valley, particularly the Sylheti, the dialect that we speak, we even the food that we eat, it's a very different cultural connotation from West Bengal. So the politics of language was a very prominent reason for divide. And when we are talking about this politics of language, it was not a very simple issue because very soon what had happened after this particular partition with the kind of migration of the Sylheti Bengalis, the Hindus as well as Muslims, which started, from different parts of East Pakistan, the Assam for Assamese ideology became very strong. It became a movement and even it carried on forward much after the partition of 1947. We had, we have heard about these riots, even though we have not seen from our parents, from the older generation about the official language movement of 1960 and the medium of instruction movement of 1972. The official language movement when the indigenous Assamese people felt that it should be Assamese because Bengali was getting dominated, whereas, the prominent indigenous people felt that Assamese culture, Assamese language was, kind of getting diluted. Similarly, the medium of instruction movement and people who have gone through this. I remember nights after nights, I've heard this kind of stories from my father who was doing his BTech at that point of time. There was no BTech, I think it was BE from Assam Engineering College. The kind of, the differences that a Bengali living in Assam would face because of probably not being an indigenous Assamese. So that has been the history of Assam for a very, very long period of time. I have moved out of Assam, even though my heart is there still. But I'm sure in certain ways, the Barak Valley still faces that kind of a thing. And the tensions which were very predominant, between the Assamese speaking Brahmaputra Valley and the predominantly Bengali speaking Shurma Valley. Shurma Valley is now known as the Barak Valley because Shurma River after the partition, the same river divided when it went to Bangladesh, it became Shurma, and in Barak Valley it is Barak, the river Barak. So what was happening where, in the partition narrative, the language prominence, the prominence of culture, which was distinctly different from the indigenous Assamese population. So that is another thing that I wanted to talk about in this particular session. Moving forward, since we are talking about the partition of 1947, we cannot entirely probably not talk about the religious demarcation, but here the religious demarcation was very different. It was not on the lines of the way that we have found in the mainstream partition narratives of the wars, the violence between Hindus and Muslims, because the Sylheti Hindus and the Sylheti Muslims both, both of them came from Sylhet and they settled down in Barak Valley and other parts of Assam. So when we look at the Sylheti Muslims in Assam, particularly now that there is so much being spoken about NRC, the National Register of Citizens and CA, that is the Citizenship Amendment Act. When we are talking so much about that, it becomes very imperative for us to understand the position, the very precarious position that the Sylheti Muslims in Assam were at that point of time. But before that, it becomes very important to understand that did the entire lot migrate only after the July Referendum Act? It was not so. We have seen mass migration in the last decade of the 19th century, mainly by the landless peasants. And they were basically from the districts of Maimanshing, Noakhali, Pabna, Bogura. They were actually providing a lot of cheap and steady labor supply to the agriculturists, who were Assamese. And this migration was in the colonial times done completely with the assent of the British colonizers. They wanted that this peasants come down to Assam. They wanted that this kind of lands which were not really cultivable. Probably they could cultivate those lands. So there is a history to it. It's not that everybody came in only after the partition. And I just spoke about the July referendum and what happened actually, in the Sylheti consciousness for the Sylheti Bengalis as well as the Sylheti Muslims. Sylhet was made a part of East Pakistan, leaving the 3.5 thanas of Ratabari, Karimganj, Patarkandi, and Badarpur, which I just mentioned, was only this 4 parts were made a part of Barak Valley. So both the Sylheti Muslims and the Sylheti Hindus felt very cheated about it. They felt defeated that even though, they wanted a particular thing, during the July referendum, the voting and all, but whatever they had voted for did not really take place. It did not really make things easier for them. Another very important thing when we talk about the Sylheti Muslims in Assam, we must understand, what are these fragmented groups, the differentiated and the fragmented groups that we are talking about. I think we can divide them into 3 parts. One is probably the indigenous Assamese-speaking Muslims located in the Brahmaputra Valley. We have a lot of people who migrated long back before the partition, and they speak Assamese. So they are this indigenous people. And the Bengali-speaking Muslims of East Bengal origin who settled in the Brahmaputra Valley since 1911, the peasants that majorly I was talking about, and the Bengali-speaking Muslims settled in the Shurma Valley, that is the Sylhet and Kachar, since 1874. So this particular idea makes us understand that this mass migration that we have seen after the July referendum was not the only population of the Sylheti Muslims, or for that matter, the Sylheti Hindus that we see in Assam. There are larger political things at play, and we must look at those histories very properly in order to understand. The next thing that I want to talk about is the class issues. When we are talking about the status of the Bengalis, the Sylheti Bengalis in Assam, after the partition, who were those people? Were they all impoverished? No, not. It's not the truth. We find that there was a particular kind of a class of people who were very, very different from the have-nots of the society, whom, for convenience sake for this research, I have termed as Bhadralok. Bhadralok in Bengali means, the babus, the elite class. So we see that there were deeper connotations of the partition in Sylhet and Sylhet Barak Valley that we find in India's northeast, where it is not only religion, it is not only language, but we also see class issues. We see the educated and employed people, and they were very different from their impoverished counterparts. They were not at all similar. These elite middle-class communities were basically the quintessential babus, or government employees in clerical positions, many of whom had migrated to Assam even before the partition. Shillong at that point of time was a hub for Bengalis. There were a lot of people who had built their houses and all that there. They were already living a good life. It's not that they all shifted only after that. So even in the Barak Valley also, we find a lot of people who had already migrated to Assam much before the partition. And this class of people, many of them spoke English. They had already mastered the language of the colonial masters, and thereby they had got at least clerical positions and positions in the legal sector or teaching professions and things like that. And they were kind of doing well. So we must understand that this category of people are also very different from the people who migrated later on. They had their own property, and even though it was before partition, they had their ancestral homes in Sylhet where they used to go often, but they had also built homes in the Brahmaputra Valley, Shillong, Barak Valley, and all that. So what I want to point out is that class issues was also a very prominent thing, particularly among the Sylheti Hindu community that we see, that they were very different from the impoverished migrants. They already had a head start in Assam much before the migration after the partition had taken place. This is one very interesting thing. I'm almost nearing the end of my talk. As I had promised, I do not want to be very lengthy. Is about the very aspect of violence. Whenever we talk about partition, we talk about violence, trauma, bloodshed, rapes, loss of property and all that. But when we look at this particular partition space of Sylhet Barak Valley, we find that violence is not the way that we find in mainstream partition narratives. We usually see lack of stories of violence, not the way the blood, the massacre that we hear from the partition, in Punjab and, other parts of the country. We do not see that kind of a violence. The major issue in this kind of partition, this particular space of partition, is majorly about the displacement, migration, loss of home, loss of property. I quote from Anindita Dasgupta, the noted historian, where she talks about in her Remembering Sylhet, the book that is one of the very few books written about this particular partition narratives of Sylhet and Barak Valley, where she says, I quote, "Violence has been a missing theme in the predominantly Bhadralok Sylheti Hindu narratives. While there indeed was nostalgia, there was comparatively less trauma associated with their memories of 1947. So this is something which she has kind of summarized in a report after her field study, when she has spoken to a lot of Sylheti Bengalis as well as Sylheti Muslims. And she finds that there is this ever-present idea of nostalgia. There is this ever-present idea of loss of, home, loss of property, that sense of displacement, sense of migration, which even in my discourses, even in the people that I know, wherever we have spoken, this is the major theme which comes out in this space of partition, rather than the massacre of violence that we speak about. And this also leads us in the contemporary times of the violence that we are seeing, for this CA and NRC in today's time. This is probably, it has taken a new dimension altogether in today's time. I come to the last slide of my presentation, wherein the major idea, the major argument that I want to put forward in today's presentation is not only talking about a particular region's narrative, a particular history, a history which whichever forum I have always spoken about, of India's Northeast, I have always said that just pockets of our country, the culture, the history that we store should not be forgotten. That is a major idea. People of those regions particularly should not lead those, those histories, those memories to be forgotten. So when we talk about, in the first slide that I had spoken about memory, remembrance, and forgetting. So my initiative, my argument in this particular talk is remembrance. How do we remember these stories? How, in today's time, how can we preserve these stories? Because even today, if I start probably writing something about my family's history, there are a handful of people who can give me, the history of whatever had happened, because with time, people, are no more. So what happens is an entire community's histories are, getting entirely delete it. So before that entirely gets deleted, it is up to us to store this kind of partition memories from the region, Barak Valley, that I'm talking about. I have given 3 books. I hope it is visible. One is a very dear book that I read and I want to promote, is edited by Nirmal Kanti Bhattacharjee and Dipendu Das. Dipendu Das is professor in Assam University, my alma mater. This is an edited book of collected short stories which were originally written in Bengali and has been later on very, very beautifully, translated in English, Barbed Wire Fence. And the title itself touches our hearts. These are stories of displacement from Barak Valley of Assam. I think this is a very good initiative which has been taken to translate those stories and record those stories, even though at the fictional space, but which today's generation can read and get an idea of what partition meant for the Barak Valley people. There is this book called Remembering Sylhet by Anindita Dasgupta, a very noted historian, and the other one also that you can see about the Sylhet referendum. So these books are books which are very few in number, but probably we should initiate more such narratives, whether in the fictional space or non-fictional space, by people from the region who can talk about those, who can write about those, and probably keep them immortal. Let the history of our place not go away. I would also, on the right-hand side corner, down, talk about this particular idea of partition museum that we see in Amritsar, so very famous. I think people of the regions of India's Northeast also should initiate. It's not only about India's Northeast, but also elsewhere also, where we had our own histories, of preserving those histories. That's very important so that they do not go away. So those museums also serve the purpose. Since my study is basically based on memory studies, I would also like to talk about material memory. Material memory is memories which are in the form of material, of course, So partition memories, when you talk about today's age, is an age of digitalization, right? So everywhere, all the time we are digital. I have to see certain photographs on Instagram some time back. I remember I think there is a particular, a site which I'm not able to remember right now, where people have posted ornaments and, a gun and things like that, which are partition memories of the past. So similarly here also, I found something on Google of a book of a radio that you can see a transistor and a picture, which are all from, the partition time. Of course, this do not belong to the space that I'm talking about, but what I'm trying to insist is that my family house back in Barak Valley has a lot of this kind of material memories. I'm sure all of us belonging to different varieties of places have those. We must preserve those, and we must not let the stories die. The last thing that I want to talk about is this, the digital initiative, very beautiful, taken, called the 1947 archive. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. When I look at the partition archive, 1947 archive, what troubles me is that the limited number of stories from Barak Valley. I see only 2 stories from Silchar, which is my hometown, and Karimganj, also my hometown, another 2 stories. So people are coming forward and talking, yes, but then we need more such stories to come out, whether it's our own stories or stories heard from our family members or friends. More such stories coming in the digital platform is when stories will not die. The oral tradition will remain forever recorded. So with this, I come to the end of my talk. I would like to end with this particular thought that I found so beautiful in Urvashi Butalia's The Other Side of Silence, a book which I really loved reading. Urvashi Butalia, before I read this particular quotation of hers, remembers a friend of hers, a professor, who meets a lot of students who come to her to do their research work, and many of those students talks about doing research on partition, and she says that what is there to work on partition anymore, which makes Urvashi Butalia think this, and this is what I'm reading of Butalia's thinking about this particular issue, which resonates so much with what I feel. She says, I quote, "Is there ever a moment when we can say the need to study a particular history has ended, that everything has now been done and dusted?" According to me, I don't think so. This is ever a possibility when the history, any history for that matter, ends anywhere. So the very purpose of this particular talk, this particular session, was to initiate research in this particular field, if not research, at least to write, at least to talk about all those histories of our past, which have been there through generations, I'm sure, in every family. Keep them alive. I spoke to you about my history, the place that I belong to. I'm sure many of you have heard about such kind of histories from your own family, your friends. Keep them alive, write them, record them, so that future generations do not think that was there anything called partition, or probably India's independence is only about a holiday that we get, and probably if the student has to go and celebrate the Independence Day, probably in the school it's all about eating a laddu and coming back. So with that, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal ma'am, for such a enriching talk and focusing upon the unheard narratives of Sylhet and Barak Valley, the partition narratives. And I do not know about others, but I'm particularly personally, I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful that I got the chance to listen to your talk. It also you also talked about material memory, and you also your talk was also can be related to the alternative history of new historicism, if I am not wrong. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes. Please continue.
And there are a lot of stuff, there are a lot of things that I can relate to you, because I belong to Brahmaputra Valley, Sivsagar. Have you heard about the
Yes,
town?
definitely.
15 days back, I got married off to Barak Valley. So this is my intra-migration from Brahmaputra Valley to Barak Valley. 15 days back, I got married, and my husband's place is in Hailakandi, and where I work, it is in Srigori, Badarpur. So all the things I can really feel that, and I can really relate, and there are so much things to learn which are not yet exposed. We know about the Ahom history, we know about the this one about the Sipsagar, about this thing. These are so much this has been written, this has been documented, in various things, but here from this side of Assam, we do not I don't know, if I'm not with my limited knowledge, I come to know that there are lots of things to be discovered, and I think our listeners, our audience is also got really fascinated by the talk, by the unheard narratives. And another thing, ma'am, you said that your father was studied from AEC, Assam Engineering College, ma'am, you said so?
Yes. He was first in AEC, and during that riot that I was speaking about, he shifted. First, he was in Jorhat Engineering College, which is a much more difficult area for Bengalis to live in, and then he shifted to Assam Engineering College.
And my brother passed 2 years back, and he is the last batch of BE from Assam Engineering College.
Nice.
After that, it became BTech. The course became BTech. So there are a lot of things in common, and I would like to listen to you on and on and on, but some other day for sure.
Thank you.
And I would like to request the other members who would like to inquire or suggest any opinion, or they have any kind of query. So our house is open for question answers round. So if you have any query, you can drop your question on the chat box. So I would like to read to Madam. If our participants, any of the participants would have any kind of query. Ma'am, with this, I would like to ask you that if somebody wants to explore this part of history, what will be the basic books that one can refer to or one can go through?
Shweta, I think this is a very important question that you have asked. See, when I was probably working on this particular area, I found it's not that we do not have books. Actually, books are there, but very limited in number. But it all again depends on from what kind of study that one would like to really do about. So, in case somebody is interested to work on probably fictional studies, for example, it becomes very imperative, according to me, to know the local language. Now, since I am talking about the Barak Valley condition and the situation over there, I think it is imperative that we know how to read, Bengali. So, in the similar manner, if this is something which anybody else is interested in doing, probably any other particular place, they must know that, because the literature might be very limited in English, but might be very rich when it comes to the local language. So, in local language Bengali, there are a lot of books, fictional spaces. When it comes to non-fictional spaces, I think we cannot limit ourselves only to the fictional spaces. There are a lot of research papers which have already been published. There are books written by historians, which becomes very important for us. Like, for example, I gave you examples of two books, like, for example, of Anindita Dasgupta. One very heartening thing is a book by Urvashi Butalia, recently edited. I saw that there is an article on, by Sanjeev Barua, very famous again, which is on the situation of Assam, and he speaks a lot about, he has written a lot about the case of Barak Valley and Sylhet and all that. So there are books, but one must really dig deep into it and look at different genres. It is not always necessary that you look only at fictional space and it gets over and done with. Look at a lot of historical books which will help one to understand, because historians have written a lot. Right from the colonial period till now, there are a lot of things which have been written. And also probably I feel if we can also look at, because it should not be restricted in this kind of a study. So probably even when I mentioned about the Partition archive, the digital space, that also can be a primary source of work sometimes, right? Or probably for that matter, a person who is interested in, looking at it from the media point of view, why not take it up from the social media, whatever is there? That also can be a primary work. So it is not necessary that we have to be very limited in our kind of work, whatever we are doing. It can be varied. That is what I feel.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, I really thank you for providing us with such an enriching talk and focusing upon the unexplored area. Because in partition literature or any graduation course, when we have papers of partition literature, we read about Sadat Hasan Manto, we read about Bapsi Sidhwa, even
Rajinder
Amitabh
Singh.
Ghosh. uh, Amitabh Ghosh, and we also read about recently Jivanananda Das is
Yes,
also added. Uh, but from this side of Assam, uh, I think the syllabus should, if syllabus should include a small
yes,
document or any
yes.
fiction or non-fiction, that would be very helpful. So moving on with our next item, that is I would like to introduce our chairperson for the event. Dr. Prasanta Chakravarti was working in Government College of Tripura for 34 years. After his retirement from the Bir Bikram Memorial College, Agartala, he worked as a visiting professor in FI University, Rajarshi College of Skill and Education, respectively. A dynamic academician, he has actively participated in many seminars, conferences, published 32 papers, he has to his credit many book chapters, co-edited couple of textbooks for the students of Tripura University. Sir, I would like to request you to grace the moment with your remarks.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh,
But not visible. Now visible. Okay.
yeah, now I'm visible. Okay, first of all, I thank the General Secretary, the President, the event coordinator, and all other EC members to select me as the chairperson of this Sahitik Satsang evening when Dr. Payal Dutt Chaudhary spoke beautifully on such a sensitive issue which makes all the Bengali population on both sides of the border emotionally even today. The partition has made the Bengalis live on both sides of the border with a fractured identity. Incidentally, the speaker, the MOC, and the chairperson are from the same region, Northeast India, and therefore have mostly the same feeling about the fractured identity, alienation, and memory. Madam has actually presented very beautifully the problems related to migration and refugee problems, and she has also spoken how and when actually people used to come from the other side of the border. It is not that I have also read in Anindya Dasgupta that it is not that only uh, you know people used to begin to come after the partition, but before the partition, when the colonial government was there, even at that time, people used to come to work in the offices, in the tea gardens, and so and so forth. Even my grandfather, he worked as a lawyer for the king of for the Maharaja of Tripura. So he was not affected by partition. He came much before the partition. So that is an issue. Now, as she has referred to Anindya Dargupta, I think I have come across another historian who is working in Diamond Harbour Women's University, and her name is Anindya Ghoshal. She is born and brought up in Koilashore, and she has written beautifully on the northeast, the partition and the independence in northeast India. So, for reference, uh, you can choose some of the books, and in academia also there are several articles written by her. So you can go through this article. Those who are interested in the Northeast partition, they can go through this and then they can enrich themselves. Now, she has rightly pointed out, our Payal Madam has rightly pointed out that the Barbed Ware. This is really a very beautiful book written by edited by our Dipen sir and then Nirmal Bhattacharya. And there, if you read the books, you can feel what happened with these, what is actually the partition story is about. Now, Payal madam also has rightly pointed out that we uh, we did not stop coming from the other side of the border with 1947. Rather, the flow was there for long years, and even today, we see that people are coming from the other side of the border, and they work here for as laborer or rickshaw pullers or as small vegetable sellers, and then at the end of the day they go back to the other side of the border. So these things are still happening. Now what happened, the northeast region, they accepted the inflow of the refugees from the other side, and at one point of time they begin to feel that uh, they are marginalized, and they they begin to challenge this sort of condition because they think that their culture was at the brink, and then they also begin to feel that this is something which was making them poorer and poorer because economically the Bengalis were dominating. So for all these reasons, we see that the 70s, from the 70s, it was a very disturbing place in Assam and Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya, and all these things, all these states. And in this way, we see that the Bengalis, especially the marginalized Bengalis, they are again in a very difficult situation. We can see in Tripura, some stories were written by some famous story writers. I just forgot the name. Hori Shadan Das, or like this. I forgot the name exactly. He wrote a story of a poor family who who came from Bangladesh, and they began to reside in a hilly area where it was full of the tribal people, and all of a sudden there was no tension among the tribal and the non-tribal, but then there was a tension imposed upon them, and as a result, these poor people, the marginalized people, they were again rooted out. So these things are happen. These things are happening. Not that only these marginalized people, they were they were uprooted from their own land in Bangladesh or in East Pakistan, and they have settled down. But here also the same problem they are facing. So these things are there in Tripura especially, and also in Assam, because in Assam and Northeast India we hear a slogan, Bangal Khadao. Now Bangal Khadao means drive away those refugees who came from the other side of the border. So this is something, a very important part of the partition issue. That means we we had to leave our own land after because of some violence, or out of fear. And when we came here, there also the same problem was erupted, and as a result, the Bengali people, they are again in a very tense situation. Now, we see memory is something which we cannot do away with, because memory helps us to form form our future. Because if we forget our memory, then we cannot progress. See, if we forget our memory, then we will do the same uh, mistake or same fault that we have done in during the partition. So memory is very essential, and memory helps us to understand what will take place in the next few days or next few years. So yes, madam has rightly pointed out that we have a fractured identity, and when we talk about Tripura, we see that people are telling about, oh, they are having a refugee culture. Now, what is this refugee culture? That means we are not associated with the land. We are not feeling that this is our land. If we ask, I had some feeling that when we asked my grandmother or somebody like her, they used to believe that they will leave their own this land, and they will go back to their own land. So that is their own land, and this is a land where they will stay temporarily, and therefore they do not care about the land. They do not care about this particular the culture of this particular land and all these things. So therefore we see that this refugee culture is something which is associated with the refugees coming from the other side of the border. So, and another important thing, uh, we have noticed that these people who are coming from the other side of the border, they actually they are, even a few years ago, they come here, they settle down, but then they are, they feel alienated. They cannot mix up with the, or they not make associated with this particular culture of this particular land. And madam has rightly pointed out this what is this, Shohore and something like, what did you say? I forgot the Latin term. This Shohore
Which one,
and
sir? Sorry, sir.
Huh?
No, I said Desher Bari and Chowder Bari.
Desher Bari, yeah. So this Desher Bari feeling is always there. Even a few years ago, I have talked with some people, and they even then they felt that this Desher Bari is something which should be remembered, which should be there in their memory. And this particular Shohorer Bari, this is a place where they have to live because of so many bindings, because they have to earn something like this, and so, and for their safety. So again, this concept of Desher Bari and Shohorer Bari makes the people of this particular land that they are having a refugee culture. So this problem is there, and we have to study all these things. And madam has rightly pointed out the language problem. You see, in Tripura and in Borak Valley, we use dialects which are not the standard dialects, which we do not find in Kolkata. And this they are, our people in when we go to Kolkata, and when we use our dialect, they begin to undermine us as they are Bengal. So Bengal means they are not up to our standard. So these things happen now, because we are from the other side of the border. People living in this particular area, they think that these people are refugee, and they should not be given upper hand, all these things. So these things happen, and madam has rightly pointed out all these aspects of life, and we should she has rightly pointed out that we have to make some study of the northeast partition, because this is a very important aspect which we have already missed, and those who are really affected by partition, they are almost dead, or very few people are still living. And Anindita Ghoshal and her team, they have taken a very important role in making a digital archive, and they have opened it on 15th of August. So if you have any connection with Anindita Ghoshal, you can have this opportunity of enjoying the archive, digital archive, and that will help us to study more about this Northeast India, because Northeast India is still a neglected area in terms of research and other activities, especially on this partition issue. So we should come forward, and we should try to develop a research base where we can study more about the partition issue, and let us focus on this particular issue as a new area of research. So with all these things, with all these few words, I thank everybody here for listening to me, and especially to Payal Madam again for delivering a very good lecture on this issue, and then highlighting so many aspects of this particular area in our lecture. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable input. Now I would like to take the opportunity to request the founder and general secretary of iSPELL, Ghanashyam sir, who is a professor of English at the Department of Higher Education, Chhattisgarh, to place before us his thoughts and views and further distribute the certificates. Sir is there with us. If sir is there with us, Ghanashyam sir.
Sir is not seen here.
Sorry, sir.
Sir is not here. I think, sir.
Oh, then the distribution of certificates would be done by
Prasanta sir.
Prashanta sir. Sir, I would like to, sir, I would like to welcome you to distribute the certificates. We would be very grateful.
Yeah. See, Payal is also an alma mater of Assam University, and I also had done my PhD from Assam University. So we are in a way very close to each other. Uh, so I'm really happy to distribute such a certificate to our Payal madam, and she came back to iSPELL after a long gap. She was ill, and she recovered, and we are really grateful to and thankful to God that she has recovered and she could join us again in full swing. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
Sir, sir,
So
with
where is
little,
the
sir, with little steps, sir, with little step, I have also joined Barak Valley.
okay, fine, thank you. And there is a feeling, actually, I have seen many Borakgali Bengalis. They think that they should be associated with Tripura rather than with Assam, because Assam, this is a deprived area. You are coming from Sipsagar, and you see that what is the condition of Hailakandi, then Silchar, and then Patharkandi. So they had a feeling that they could have a better condition if they had they'd been associated with Tripura. You can understand better, because you have an experience in Sipsagar, and you also had in Silchar or Hailakandi. Okay, next.
Sir, the distribution of certificates, I would request you.
If it is okay, I am not, very sure. I being one of the core member of iSPELL, I don't think so. You have to distribute the certificate to me. I think we had a wonderful talk, wonderful discussion. I'm sure Pramod sir will agree with me. Pramod sir, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yeah, I do not think so. It is actually required to give me a
Yeah,
certificate.
last time you had
Yes,
told,
yes,
and
please,
really,
please. I
just
am very much against it.
we
We had
wanted to
wonderful
listen
Yeah,
you, and
discussion.
so
really, it has
we
been a
were
very enlightening
actually
session.
the certificate should be given to MOC, our
Right,
MOC.
no
She's
need
a
is there,
newcomer.
sir. Dr.
There is
Prasanta, sir.
absolutely no
Yeah,
need for the
Yeah,
core committee members to receive
actually, we wanted
certificates.
Dr. Payal ma'am
we
back
we
on
are
our
already
platform.
post holders, so why
Yeah,
should
yeah.
we be certificate
We
get the
we were
certificate?
waiting eagerly for Dr. Payal ma'am, and
Thank you
really,
so much,
truly,
Prashant sir
it's a
and
great day
Pramod
today.
sir. I think
Yeah,
we should end the session, sir, because
yeah, sure, ma'am.
it's very late also.
Right.
I thank everybody for being so patient and listening wholeheartedly,
Thank
staying with me till now. And thank you, iSPELL, once again. Thank you.
you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Good night.